This is the film that would begin a well-known rule among the original films, that the even-numbered films are good and the odd-numbered films are bad. That rule would turn out to be quite true, but for what it's worth, Star Trek III: The Search for Spock is the only bad film in the bunch that isn't just completely terrible. The problem is that this film is only designed to do one thing: bring Spock back into the films. So unfortunately, it really feels like an excuse for itself. It's not really telling a story, it's just bringing a character back into the fold any way they can. Nick Meyer was asked to come back and write this one, but he turned it down for two reasons. First, he was sticking to his guns that Spock should remain dead, and second, he admitted that he honestly didn't know how to tell a resurrection story. In truth, this really isn't a resurrection story as much as it is a resurrection that just happens. The basic setup is that before Spock died, he planted something inside Bones' mind which turned out to be his living spirit, which I guess for the purposes of the film means an out-of-body Spock himself. This is causing Bones to have a sort of multiple personality disorder as Spock is running around in his brain. You know, this is really a lot weirder than I remember it. Spock's father Sarek tells Kirk that he was supposed to bring Spock's body back to Vulcan along with whoever's brain Spock moved into. Now, I don't know if it was the Vulcans' plan all along to stick Spock back into his body or what's going on here, but Kirk takes it upon himself to go to Genesis and pick Spock's body up. Now, here's where things really start to get convoluted. It seems like a simple enough request to go to Genesis, pick something up, and come back. It's a lot simpler than most of Kirk's requests and missions, but for some reason, the brass won't let him do it. This is ultimately nothing more than a plot convenience because they can't give him a good reason for preventing him from doing this. He discusses the matter with one of the higher-ups, and the conversation here is really just atrocious. None of this adds up, and there was a perfectly good solution sitting right there in the dialogue.
Out of the question, my friend. The Council has ordered that no one but the science team goes to Genesis.
Oh, you're sending science ships? Well, hell, man, then just put him on a science ship. It's not that big a deal. He just wants to pick up his friend. Oh, wait, you have a science ship there already? Well, then just contact them and ask them to bring Spock's body back. It's not that hard. This is one of those times in a plot where the main character says, I have to do this all myself, for no good reason. It doesn't matter who brings Spock's body back, it just matters that you get it back. And then the Admiral says the most out-of-place, over-the-top, ridiculous thing you can think of.
Jen, your life and your career stand for rationality, not for intellectual chaos. Keep up this emotional behavior and you'll lose everything. You'll destroy yourself.
Dude, he's just asking to bum a ride to pick up his friend. You're talking like he wants to put billions of people's lives in danger or something. It's one dude's body. It's right across the street. But as silly as this is, it all at least leads to a really good scene. Watching the crew of the Enterprise give the finger to the brass and steal the Enterprise is a real joy. It's not only exciting and in character for all of them, but it really captures the loyalty and friendship of this group. Kirk is willing to sacrifice his career just to help his friend, and his crew is willing to sacrifice their careers just to be there for their captain. This is all good stuff, it's just predicated off of a lot of retardation. So on Genesis, David and Saavik do find Spock, who is being transformed by the Genesis wave or something. Basically, he's going from zero to old dude in a matter of hours. One thing I don't like about this is that it turns out David used an unstable element called protomatter to create the Genesis device, which is why the planet is going haywire. Because that's what happens when you use something unstable to create something that's supposed to be stable. This never worked for me. David is the opposite of Kirk. That's why he didn't like Kirk. David is by the book, so to suggest that he would resort to this just doesn't work. His excuse was that if he didn't use protomatter, the device might never have been finished, but it's the same difference either way now, isn't it? I mean, how is making something unstable any different than not making it at all? That's actually worse. But then we have the Klingon Krug, who has his own plans for the Genesis device and wants to capture it for himself. Now, let's see, how can I put this? Krug sucks. All he does is sit there on the bridge and yell. He doesn't really have a plan for any of this, and I'm really sorry, but Christopher Lloyd gives one of the worst performances here that I have ever seen. All of his dialogue was delivered so terribly that my brother and I had always said you could cut and paste different scenes of his, and it would come out about as coherently as what they actually used.
You do not give me Genesis! I will execute prisoners.
Nothing his character does makes sense. I mean, how is strangling Kirk going to get you Genesis? It's just ridiculous. However, the showdown between the Enterprise and the Klingon ship is pretty good, and the destruction of the Enterprise was a pretty big moment, and done very well. The death of David also works here. He wasn't my favorite character by any means, but Kirk's reaction was very well done, and this incident will carry through to the rest of the films in a very meaningful way. But there really isn't much more to say about this one. They needed to get Spock back. They do. They connect a mental USB from Spock to Bones, I guess, and stick his brain back in his body, and now they're ready to move on and make some actual movies. Star Trek III is not terrible. It's just not very good. Even just the fact that they put a character's name in the title of this one shows you how limited the premise is. Fortunately, this will all pay off a lot in the other films, but as for this one, about the best you can say for The Search for Spock is that it was the best of the bad ones.